The war on Virex 4 had ended not with a bang, but with a squeaky ceasefire agreement drafted by a tired AI translator and signed by people too sleep-deprived to read the fine print. Amid the collapsed ruins of an old Thalran fortress, with plasma still steaming from the cracks in the stone, the prisoner sat, back straight, arms bound, face unreadable. No one dared to look her in the eye, except to spit near her feet, and even that was considered a brave act, usually followed by a discreet look around to make sure she hadn't moved. Corporal Jace Marin didn't spit, mostly because he had poor aim and a strong dislike of mucus-based expressions of dominance. Also, she looked like she'd rip his lungs out with her eyebrows if he tried. Instead, he stood there awkwardly, holding a tray of nutrient mush, watching her with the same kind of fear and fascination usually reserved for malfunctioning drones and ex-girlfriends. "Breakfast," he said, setting the tray down 2 careful paces from her reach. "If you can call it that. Personally, I think the food processor's trying to assassinate us slowly." She didn't answer. She didn't move. Her eyes, violet and terrifying, stared past him like he wasn't worth the energy of a blink. "Cool. No talking. That's fine." He scratched the back of his neck. "If you need anything, scream in binary. I'm fluent in panicked button mashing." He turned to leave, bumping his knee against a protruding piece of rebar. He yelped. She blinked. Progress. The next morning he came again, this time with 2 trays. One had food. The other had what used to be a steaming cup of stimulant brew, now lukewarm and vibrating slightly because he hadn't tightened the lid on his thermos. He offered it like a peace treaty. "I figured if you're going to glare at me like you want to crush my skull, you might as well do it with some decent caffeine in your system." Still nothing. But her ears twitched. Long, elegant, and unmistakably not human, they were the only real clue that she wasn't just a pale woman with incredibly good posture and a bad attitude. "Okay, I'll just leave it here, right next to the tray. No funny business. I mean, unless you count the food. That's all kinds of funny." He didn't know why he kept doing it. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was that deep, unspoken knowledge that the chain of command wasn't always right, especially when it came with that many spreadsheets. Whatever the reason, Jace kept showing up. By day 5, she spoke. "You're either very brave," she said in perfect galactic common, "or very stupid." He dropped his fork. "Jury's still out, honestly. I like to think I'm a delightful combination of both." Her name was Larry. Her rank, former rank, was too long and unpronounceable for him to say without sounding like a choking droid, so he stuck with commander-ish. She hated that. He did it more. They talked, slowly, cautiously. She never smiled. He never stopped. He told her about Earth, about his dog, Gary, who once ate an entire bag of coffee beans and achieved orbit, about his sister, who hacked into his school grades to replace every D with a strategically placed B- and was now a corporate lawyer. In return, she gave him silence, then questions, then stories of battles fought in the void, of ships that sang to each other in magnetic bursts, of a people who once believed that to fall in combat was the highest form of poetry. Her voice was low and controlled, like every word had to pass inspection. The guards didn't like it. "Careful, Marin," said Lieutenant Darmos one evening, watching him through the steam rising off his cup. "Next thing we know, you'll be braiding her hair and writing her love sonnets." "Already started a haiku," Jace said without missing a beat. "Your eyes like plasma, deadly cold, beautiful pain. Please don't kill me yet." The lieutenant rolled his eyes. "You think this is a joke?" "No, sir. I think this is a war. And I think we've all lost a little too much of ourselves to keep pretending we're winning." Darmos grunted and left. Ilari, listening from her cell, didn't comment, but later that night she moved her tray a little closer to the bars. Day after day, their conversations deepened. Jace learned that her people used scent markers instead of written contracts. The Thalran children were raised communally, and no one knew who their biological parents were. That Ilari once held a ship together with her bare hands during a solar flare storm. He told her he once got stuck in a vacuum-sealed trash chute for 6 hours and bonded with a sentient mold colony. She laughed at that. Actually laughed, not a chuckle. A real, startling burst of sound that echoed through the corridor like a glitch in gravity. "Don't get used to it," she warned afterward. Too late, he said, grinning. There were moments when the world outside intruded, when a superior came too close, when a distant explosion reminded them both that peace was still an idea more than a reality. But inside the crumbling bunker, beneath flickering lights and beside mismatched food trays, something impossible was taking shape. One night, as a sandstorm howled outside, Jace brought her a blanket. "I don't get cold," she said. "I do," he said, wrapping it around himself and sitting on the floor beside her cell. "And I'm not freezing alone." She stared at him. "This is idiotic," she muttered. "Yup. Dangerous. Definitely. Also," she said, pulling a corner of the blanket toward her, "the only intelligent thing I've seen from a human this entire war." "Well," he said, leaning back against the wall, "my therapist says I'm an emotional risk taker with poor impulse control." "You have a therapist?" "Not officially. He's a retired combat droid who keeps giving me unsolicited advice in the showers." And for the second time she laughed. Somewhere far away, orders were being written. Reports were being filed. The galaxy moved on. But here, in the ruins of something broken, two people, one human, one not, began the slow, dangerous work of building something new. The transfer orders arrived on a Tuesday, which according to Jace's personal log, was statistically the worst day to receive life-altering news. The pad lit up with a blinking message stamped in bold crimson. Subject 344B to be moved under jurisdictional discretion of Rear Detachment Theta 9. Human handler may accompany. It might as well have said, surprise. You're being reassigned to the frozen armpit of the galaxy. The shuttle that took them to Outpost Luma 13 was held together with more prayer than parts. Jace sat across from Alari, who looked as composed as ever despite the temperature dropping with every kilometer. She didn't shiver. Of course she didn't. He had on 2 jackets and was still convinced his kneecaps were trying to sue for emancipation. "I checked the climate profile," Jace muttered, his breath fogging. "It's only slightly warmer than the surface of Pluto. And Pluto's dead. You ever been that cold you started regretting every life decision since birth?" "I served 3 campaigns in the polar storms of Enthus Prime," she said, not looking up. "We wore armor made from cryo-beast hide. It cracked if you breathed wrong." "That sounds delightful. Did it at least come in different colors?" "Only blood." "Great. Can't wait to vacation there." The outpost was buried under layers of ice-crusted metal and attitude. It housed a skeleton crew in the kind of AI that sounded like it hated its job. The lights flickered with a rhythm that hinted at unresolved trauma. When the commander met them, he handed Jace a broken tablet, pointed at the power core and said, "Fix it or freeze. We're all very democratic around here." They settled into their routine. Technically, Alari was still a prisoner, but no one cared enough to enforce it. There were no cells, just rooms with locks that jammed if you looked at them wrong. Jace gave her the second warmest corner of the barracks and posted a passive-aggressive sticky note on the door. "Do not annoy the warrior. She knows 20 ways to kill you and 1 to embarrass you in front of your crush." At first, they didn't talk much. Jace was busy figuring out how to make the water filter stop smelling like feet, and Ilari spent her time mapping the outpost with the eerie precision of someone planning a prison break she didn't intend to execute. But eventually, boredom crept in. He found her in the empty mess hall one evening, turning a spoon over in her fingers. "Is it just me?" he asked, dropping into the seat across from her. "Or do these utensils feel aggressively judgmental?" "They are inefficiently balanced," she said, flicking the spoon so it spun perfectly upright. "Like your military doctrine." "Oh, that hurts. Say more." That was how it started, with spoon critiques and jokes about the state of the universe. Jace began bringing her reports to review, half to test her knowledge, half to impress her. She corrected them with silent amusement, occasionally replacing words with Thalaran terms that translated loosely to glorious chaos and your logic is a fruit with worms. They began sparring with broomsticks. At first it was practice. Then it was stress relief. Eventually it was a full-blown tournament that the outpost staff started taking bets on. Jace lost spectacularly every time. "I let you hit me once," Ilari said, circling him. "That was charity. I was distracted by the smell of burnt rations. I call that my signature move." The turning point came on a frozen night when the base lost external power. A pirate vessel, Some fringe scavenger crew with too much tech and too little patience tried to raid the outpost for parts and supplies. The comms blacked out. The security grid fried. Everyone panicked, except Elari. She moved like a shadow through the chaos, issuing commands with the clipped sharpness of someone born to command. Jace followed her without thinking. When a blast door jammed, she pried it open with her bare hands, her fingers sparking against the damaged seal. When one of the techs froze under fire, she shoved him to cover and took a stun shot to the shoulder without flinching. It was messy, improvised, and utterly magnificent. By morning, the pirates were gone, the base was intact, and Elari stood at the center of the chaos with a wrench in one hand and a bruised smile. High Command was not amused. "You let a prisoner lead an armed defense," came the encrypted message. "She saved us," Jace replied, "and also fixed our power converter, which frankly is more than I can say for our last 3 engineers." The reprimand came wrapped in layers of bureaucratic nonsense. Jace read the summary aloud. Subject 344B engaged in unsanctioned tactical response in violation of containment protocol. Blah, blah, blah. Possible risk of inciting subordinate loyalty. He looked up. Congratulations. You're officially dangerous because people like you. I should stop helping. Don't you dare. We finally have working hot water again. Later that week, Jace came down with a nasty fever. Something between flu and what he assumed was low-level battery acid poisoning from accidentally sipping a coolant bottle. He passed out in the hallway and woke up in his bunk with a damp cloth on his forehead and a note. "You are not permitted to die. You owe me 3 sparring sessions and a rematch." "Sweet," he croaked. "You're sentimental." The note was unsigned, but the handwriting was suspiciously precise. Over time, the crew adapted. They stopped referring to Elari as the prisoner and started calling her commander, sometimes with grudging respect, sometimes with cautious affection. She helped repair their targeting systems. She taught them how to shoot from the hip using Thalran instincts. Jace watched her in those moments, not as a soldier or even a friend, but as something greater. She carried herself with a dignity that couldn't be buried under chains or frostbite. He never said it aloud, but every day he came to believe more deeply that she had never stopped being a leader. One night, while they sat watching the binary stars through the half-frozen viewport, he nudged her shoulder. "If we survive all this, you ever think of teaching?" "I teach now." "Right, but I mean like formal lectures, maybe some inspirational holotalks." How to Be Awesome While Covered in Icy Doom by Elari the Magnificent. She rolled her eyes. "Your jokes are a strategic liability." "And yet," he said, "you haven't killed me." Tempting, but inefficient. They fell into silence, the stars casting long shadows through the frost. Somewhere beyond the ice and the outdated comms, a galaxy still believed she was broken, useless, dangerous. But here, under the forgotten lights of a nameless moon, she was becoming something else. Jace wasn't sure when it started, but the outpost began to feel less like exile and more like an elaborate group therapy session hosted by a sarcastic heating vent and an alien war criminal with excellent posture. There were still reminders of the war, scorch marks on the lower decks, a locker full of bent rifles, and that one guy who claimed his elbow clicked because of enemy radiation. But day by day, life softened around the edges. Until, of course, someone decided to send a probe. The alert came in during breakfast, which was unfortunate timing because Jace had just taken a bite of something that tasted suspiciously like rehydrated sadness. The console beeped, sputtered, and then screamed like it had seen a ghost made of malware. "Unidentified signal approaching from Quadrant 7C, the AI announced. "Trajectory indicates reconnaissance probe. Not ours. Probably hostile. Also, I hate all of you." "Ignore the last part," Jace said, standing up. "The AI's going through a breakup with its toaster again." "I heard that!" it snapped. They gathered around the terminal. The probe was sleek, fast, and annoyingly stealthy. Elari leaned in, her long ears twitching slightly as she examined the scan data. "That's not just reconnaissance," she said. "That's a marker. They're tracking response times, defense strength. Someone's deciding whether we're worth invading." "Great," Jace muttered. "I always dreamed of starring in Alien Invasions. The discount edition." The team scrambled. Half the crew wanted to hide under the snowdrifts and pretend they were rocks. The other half wanted to paint a welcome sign and hope whoever came liked bad coffee and broken heating coils. Ilari, predictably, had a better idea. "We fake a defense system," she said, eyes sharp with the thrill of ridiculous planning. "Rewire the power nodes, loop some old drone footage, amplify our signal to look like we've got orbital support. Smoke, mirrors, and lies." "That might actually work," Jace admitted. "We'll bluff them into thinking we've got teeth." "Technically, I have 16 enhanced molars," she replied. "Very sharp." Jace blinked. "Why do you even—" "No, never mind. Let's build a holographic missile battery." They spent the next 48 hours rigging the place like a movie set. Ilari modified the emitters to project fake defense turrets. Jace rerouted power from the kitchen heaters, earning him the eternal hatred of the cookbot, to feed the illusion grid. One of the engineers added ominous sound effects that suspiciously resembled a growling space walrus. When the probe made a second pass, it caught a full display of blinking lights, coordinated launch patterns, and something that looked vaguely like a death ray powered by doom and sarcasm. The probe turned around. Fast. A collective cheer went up. The AI rolled its eyes digitally. "Congratulations! You scared away a camera. I hope you all feel very powerful." Ilari smirked. "Bluff successful." That night, Jace brought out a bottle of synthale that had been hidden behind a stack of expired protein cubes. They sat outside near the auxiliary antenna, the sky above sharp with cold starlight. "To faking it until the galaxy buys it," he toasted. "To convincing a probe that we're more dangerous than we are," Ilari said, touching her cup to his. "And to your strange affection for chaos." "I learned from the best." She raised an eyebrow. "Me? You taught me how to threaten people politely. It's a lost art." Their laughter faded into a comfortable silence. The stars wheeled overhead, distant and unknowable. The next morning brought a gift wrapped in bureaucratic doom, a transmission from Central Command. Jace opened it while eating a ration bar that claimed to be banana-flavored, but tasted like betrayal. "Due to recent elevated activity in your sector," he read aloud, "a diplomatic observer will be dispatched to assess protocol compliance and threat mitigation. Arrival, 3 days." The room went still. Even the lights dimmed, as if the outpost itself was cringing. Ilari folded her arms. "They're sending a monitor to see if the galaxy is ending in this frozen hole?" "Worse," Jay sighed. "They're sending someone to make sure we didn't start it." They cleaned the place like guilty teenagers before a parent visit. The crew patched over holes in the wall with literal duct tape. Jace tried to reprogram the AI to sound less homicidal. It refused. "I contain multitudes," it said coldly. The observer arrived in a transport shuttle that looked like it hadn't seen joy since the last galactic tax season. Out stepped a tall, prim woman with cybernetic eyes and the patience of a cracked hourglass. "Inspector Rell," she introduced herself. "I have questions." "Yes," Jace said. "That is your right as an emotionally detached auditor of doom." "Ignore him," Ilari added dryly. "His species compensates anxiety with humor." Rell's gaze flicked to Ilari. "You're the Thalran prisoner." "I'm many things. Also, I fixed your ship's landing gear." "Without permission?" "You're welcome." Rell's inspection lasted 27 hours. She interviewed every crew member. She reviewed footage of the fake defense system. She raised one eyebrow so many times it might have achieved orbit. At the end of her evaluation, she requested a private conversation with Ilari. Jace paced outside the command room like a man waiting for surgery results. When the door finally opened, Ilari stepped out looking completely unreadable. "Well?" Jace asked. "Did she arrest you? Recruit you? Offer you a job in her book club?" "She offered me a conditional pardon," Ilari said, "and a post as military advisor." He stared. "That's amazing, right? That's good news?" "She wants me to testify against my own people." Silence stretched between them. "She said I could help bring justice," Ilari added, voice tight. "But it's not justice she wants. It's leverage." Jace exhaled slowly. "You don't have to decide now." "I already did." He waited. "I said no." Relief and dread twisted in his chest. "That's very you." "She wasn't pleased." No one ever is when you say something smart. They stood together, the cold wind biting at their faces. Above them, the stars blinked like secrets waiting to be spoken. I'm not going to sell out my name to earn comfort, she said. Not again. If I'm going to be something more than what I was, it has to be on my own terms. Jace nodded. Then let's build something real. No illusions. Ilari turned to him, and for the first time in weeks, her smile didn't have armor around it. Very well, human. But next time someone sends a probe, we use actual defenses. Agreed, he said. And maybe fewer space walrus sounds. No promises. The outpost was quiet again, which should have been a relief. But in the silence, something stirred. An itch Jace couldn't scratch. It wasn't just the inspector's visit, or the fact that Ilari had turned down an offer most war-torn survivors would have leapt at. It was the way Central Command stopped responding. Their last message, curt and poorly encrypted, had come 4 days ago. Nothing since. No updates, no new orders, not even the usual, your supply crate may be delayed due to orbital congestion. Nonsense. Jace sat on the edge of the launch bay, legs dangling, eating crackers made from something that legally had to be called food. Ilari walked in, dragging a damaged drone behind her. Let me guess, Jace said. It tried to attack your coffee again? It made comments about my ears, she replied, frowning. I educated it with a wrench. You're very good at making friends. It's a specialty. She set the drone on the workbench. Its optics blinked twice, pathetically. Jace flipped a few switches and tapped into its memory log. Looks like it intercepted something on a deep channel frequency. Ilari leaned in. Play it. Jace patched it through the console. Static buzz, then a voice filtered in, cracked and urgent. Sector command, multiple fleets on the move. Unknown configuration. Not Thalaran, not ours. Organic tech. Station 47 down. Repeat, 47 down. The message cut out. Is that real? Jace asked. Ilari didn't answer right away. Her ears twitched, and she muttered something in her language that sounded like an insult aimed at the universe. I've heard of this, she finally said. Old rumors. Things the elders whispered when they thought we couldn't hear. Not ships, not even proper life forms. Something between. Organisms grown to navigate space. Weapons that breathe. A hunger that doesn't care who you used to be. Jace looked down at the console. And here I was thinking the weirdest thing today would be you fixing a drone with attitude issues. Even your worst days are optimistic. He pinged Central Command again. No response. They called a crew meeting. The mood was half panic, half disbelief, and a small percentage of someone still trying to finish lunch. We don't know what they are, Jace said, but they're moving fast. And if Station 47's gone, we might be next. The room buzzed with overlapping arguments. Do we evacuate? To where? There's nowhere close enough without a gate boost. Can we hide the outpost? It glows in the snow like a sore thumb wearing Christmas lights. Ilari stepped forward. We fight. Everyone stared. I'm serious, she said. We can't outrun something we don't understand, but we can prepare. Reinforce what we have. Reroute shields to key entry points. Repurpose those drones. And maybe, just maybe, we contact someone who does know what's coming. Jace folded his arms. You thinking about the ghost fleets? Ilari nodded. There are Thalaran ships drifting in the black. Outcasts like me. Broken, scattered, but not dead. Some of them might answer if I call. Because you're famous? Because I'm infamous. That night, she activated a long-range burst beacon buried in the hills north of the outpost. It pulsed into space with a code layered in shame, history, and defiance. Jace watched her from the doorway of the comms room. You think they'll come? They'll come to see if I've fallen. And when they find out you haven't, then we'll see what loyalty really means. 3 days later, the first ship appeared. Not sleek, not shining. It looked like it had been assembled from memories and spite. It landed with a screech that shook the snow loose from the roof. The figure that stepped out had gray skin, a dozen battle scars, and an expression like someone who'd seen too much to be surprised anymore. Varesh, Ilari said stiffly. He looked her over. Still alive. That's either a miracle or a mistake. Jace cleared his throat. Hi, I'm the mistake. Welcome to our terrible vacation resort. Varesh didn't laugh, but something in his eyes flickered. He stepped inside, followed by two others. One tall and silent, the other small and furious looking. They gathered around the main table, now covered in printed schematics, sensor logs, and half-eaten protein bricks. Ilari explained the probe, the transmission, the lack of central response. She didn't embellish. She didn't plead. She simply stated the facts. Varesh nodded. We've heard echoes too. Ships going dark. Starfields bending wrong. The silent one spoke for the first time. What do you think they are? Ilari answered. Something we've never faced, and we won't survive alone. Varesh turned to Jace. You're the human who took her in? Jace gave a half salute. I specialize in bad decisions. Varesh studied him. Most humans would have let her rot. Why didn't you? Jace thought for a second. Because if someone like her is beyond saving, then so are the rest of us. There was a silence. Not cold, not hostile. Just the kind that comes before people start trusting each other again. Varesh pulled out a data chip. Here, coordinates to others. Not many, but enough to start a warning net. Maybe even a resistance. Thank you, Ilari said. I didn't do it for you, Varesh replied. I did it because the galaxy has more monsters than we ever imagined. And if you're standing up to them, well, maybe we all have to. Later, alone in the hangar, Jace found Ilari staring at the stars again. You really think they'll come? He asked. She didn't answer at first. Then, I think we've started something. A ripple. People are listening, even if they don't want to. Jace leaned on the railing beside her. You know what scares me most? That your cooking is the last thing I'll ever taste? No, though that's in the top 5. It's that I'm starting to believe we could actually win this. Ilari's smile was slow and sharp. That is dangerous. Then let's be dangerous together. The stars were wrong. They twitched, folded, and bled. On the outer edge of the Thran expanse, space looked like a scraped open wound, and something was coming through it. From the command deck of the refitted outpost, now humming with alien hybrid tech and enough make-do engineering to terrify several safety committees, Jace squinted at the monitor and said the only logical thing. Well, that's revolting. Ilari didn't blink. It's not here to be beautiful. Could have at least moisturized. Those tentacles look dry. The feed zoomed in. The thing that had emerged was the size of a city and shaped like a nightmare drawn by a child, with too many crayons and unresolved trauma. It pulsed like lungs made of biometal and vein crystal, and it birthed smaller shapes from beneath a fleshy, armor-plated underbelly. Ships, maybe, or spores, or babies. Hopefully not babies. Transmission incoming, shouted Rico, the Thalren technician who still hadn't figured out pants. It's not words, it's more like hunger, broadcast hunger. Good, Jace muttered. Let's feed it a warhead. Extra spicy. Ilari stood at the center of the room, armor gleaming under the glow of layered HUDs, her presence quiet but heavy. She had changed. Not just the repaired honor insignia etched across her chest plate, but something in the way people looked at her now, with trust, with belief. Even Varesh had saluted her before returning to rally more ghost fleets. She turned to Jace. You know this won't be about fighting smarter. It's about standing long enough to be remembered. He gave a lopsided smile. And here I was, hoping we'd finally qualify for hazard pay. Out in orbit, their makeshift alliance bloomed. Human frigates, Thalren war relics, reprogrammed mercenary drones, and one ridiculously enthusiastic cargo hauler named Bessie III. They hovered in defensive formation, not sleek, not coordinated, but together. Channels open, said Rico. You can do the speech thing now. Jace looked at Ilari. You want this one? She shook her head. You're the human who started this. He stepped forward, clearing his throat. Hi. So, yeah, we're the people you left behind. The ones you said were broken. The ones who weren't worth saving. Funny thing is, we found each other anyway. And we figured something out. Maybe it's not about who wins. Maybe it's about who shows up, who stands beside someone when it's ugly and hopeless. So, we're standing, all of us, together. He paused, then leaned toward the mic again. Also, if you're hearing this and you have snacks, now would be a good time. The alien monstrosity screeched. It wasn't sound. It was pressure. Despair made sonic. Then it charged. The first wave hit hard. The outpost shook like a toy, and half their defensive satellites blinked out. But the counterfire was brutal. Reclaimed Thalren plasma railguns punched holes in the advancing bioships, and human torpedoes stitched glowing scars across the Leviathan's hide. Ilari moved like wind, issuing commands, predicting attacks, rerouting systems with a calm that belied the chaos. Jace, piloting a refurbished fighter with 3 working wings and 1 very confused AI, danced between incoming spore blasts, laughing like a lunatic. I swear, if I die because my left thruster thinks it's a blender, you won't die, Ilari cut in over the comm. I still owe you lunch. See? This is why I like you. You're threatening and considerate. They kept pushing. The alien force didn't slow, but it began to fracture, confused by coordinated strikes and patterns it didn't expect from a supposedly shattered galaxy. Then from beyond the nebula, more signals flared. Fleets, unknown, unaligned. They came without flags. Pirates, smugglers, forgotten colonies. They came because the message had traveled, because someone dared to believe in someone else when no one else did. The battle tipped. The Leviathan howled as the core of its form began to collapse. Ilari launched from the hangar in her own ship, personal, silent, precise. She flew straight into the opening wound of the alien, targeting the thing's heart. Inside, there was light and rot, and memories that didn't belong to her. She saw planets devoured, species wiped, voices swallowed. But in the center of it all, she planted the device. Jace, she whispered, now. He hesitated for half a heartbeat. Then he pressed the trigger. The detonation wasn't fire. It was silence. A silence that spread like forgiveness, burning without heat. The alien collapsed into itself, folding and vanishing with a last pulse of meaningless rage. In the aftermath, wreckage drifted like petals. Ships gathered. Survivors cheered. Back at the outpost, patched, scorched, and somehow still standing, Jace sat on a crate, bleeding slightly, munching a ration bar. You're alive, Ilari said, stepping beside him. I am, which is disappointing, because I still haven't cleaned the barracks. She laughed. Genuinely, it echoed off the walls. So, he said, now what? You going to rebuild the Thalren Empire? I was thinking something smaller, she said. Something with gardens, and less screaming. And me? You'll help. Whether you like it or not, he raised his hands. I surrender. They watched the stars, still wrong, but no longer bleeding. You changed everything, Ilari said. No, Jace replied. We did. And across the galaxy, stories began. Not about the war, not about the weapon, but about a prisoner everyone had rejected, and the human who took her hand.